He comes from Sweden, the girls are very nice. He dumped his girlfriend to play in red and white. He's scoring goals with the cannon on his chest. His name is Victor Gyökeres. Welcome back to your English Aussie. Today I'm going to take you through the best defenders, midfielders and forwards to buy, sell and hold for game week 3, and talk to you a little bit about what your chip strategy could look like for game week 3. So strap on your boots and let's dive straight into the video. So kicking off with the defenders, and first up on my list, I have the tier 1 buys for defenders. As you can see here, I've got the expected goals, assists, expected goal involvements per 90. BPS is the bonus point system, bonus points, and defensive contributions as DC, along with the fixtures for the next 5 game weeks. So yep, first up on my tier 1 buy list is Pedro Porro. I think Spurs have been excellent defensively, keeping a clean sheet against Manchester City. Pedro Porro on a lot of set pieces. You saw him take one of the direct free kicks there for Spurs, and a really nice fixture run over the next 5 games. Bournemouth, who I don't think look fantastic offensively. West Ham, who've been the worst team in the Premier League so far. Brighton a bit up and down. However, I do think offensively they are a good side. And then Wolves and Leeds in 6 and 7, which are really nice fixtures for Spurs. Next up on that list is Dorgu of Manchester United. They do play Burnley in game week 3 and Sunderland in game week 7. Sandwiched in between Man City, Chelsea and Brentford. Chelsea and Brentford can run hot and cold, and I do think Dorgu does have a lot of attacking talent that he can produce coming up that left-hand side for Manchester United, specifically in the Burnley and Sunderland game. Next up on the list is De Ligt of Manchester United. Again, I think could be a really nice option going into game week 3 against Burnley. He has racked up 20 defensive contributions across the 2 games, 10 in both games, and has made the 2 points in both matches. He's also been a threat from set pieces and someone that Man United look towards from those set pieces. So in some of those easier games, he does have some potential for attacking returns as well. At 5 million, I would also consider De Ligt. Next up is Fabian Schär of Newcastle. Now, Newcastle's next 2 game weeks are against Leeds and Wolves. I am recording this just before Newcastle play against Liverpool. However, in the first game week, they did look really defensively compact against Aston Villa, and Fabian Schär did rack up 11 defensive contributions and hit that DEFCON target in the first game week. For me, it looks like a really nice buy over the next couple of game weeks. Then Bournemouth. Arsenal was their tricky game in 6, and Nottingham Forest again in game week 7. Into the tier 2 buy section, and I do still have Milenkovic of Nottingham Forest and also Murillo of Nottingham Forest. Despite them not having racked up the expected defensive contributions that you would have expected from Murillo and potentially from Milenkovic as well, I do think Nottingham Forest just have fantastic fixtures over the next 5 game weeks. They've got West Ham, Burnley and Sunderland, with Arsenal and Newcastle sandwiched in between. They do have a lot of potential for those clean sheet points, and obviously as defenders that is one of, if not the key metric. I think Nottingham Forest have still been good defensively, although they've conceded a couple of goals. They still do look like a good defensive lineup. Milenkovic in there for the potential goal threat as well. Moving on to my next option in here, and it is a little 4 million option for Sunderland. Dan Ballard did go out with an injury for Sunderland in their game against Burnley. Alderete has been coming off the did come off the bench in game week 1 for Sunderland before starting in game week 2. It does look like that he would be likely to partner Ballard in that centre-back pairing. However, obviously Silt had come in for Ballard due to his injury, so expect Alderete to definitely be starting in game week 3, especially if Ballard is out. At 4 million, he does have the potential to also pick up those defensive contributions, 14 DEFCONs in a start and a few minutes. Finally, I've got Van de Ven of Tottenham. I did like Pedro Porro due to his attacking returns, but I also like Van de Ven just due to the great fixtures for Tottenham. Although he doesn't quite pick up the defensive contributions, he is a threat from set pieces and someone Tottenham target off those. His expected goals per 90 is inflated slightly by one big chance that he had in game week 1. Into the hold section, we do have Tarkowski, Kirkes and Virgil van Dijk. Tarkowski has been racking up those defensive contributions in the last couple of games, and Everton do have Wolves, so I would look to hold on to him over that fixture and maybe over game week 4 just to see how Everton keep going over the next couple of game weeks. Kirkes, I think, still has the potential for some good attacking returns for Liverpool. Hold on to him after that Arsenal game, just for the Burnley, Everton, Crystal Palace run. Same for Virgil, obviously racking up 21 DEFCON in that first match for Liverpool against Bournemouth. Again, recording this before the Newcastle game. In the sell section, we have Frimpong, who's out with an injury, and Ait-Nouri, who was injured in Man City's match versus Tottenham. We aren't sure whether he will be back for game week 3 against Brighton. We've also got Guardiola, who hasn't quite featured as heavily in the Manchester City lineup as we would expect. And Lewis Hall of Newcastle, who also hasn't broken in to that Newcastle starting lineup with Livramento on the left and Kieran Trippier on the right. Moving on to the midfielders, and if you have been enjoying this content so far, please smash that like button, subscribe down below to the channel. It really does help a small content creator like me continue to grow in this space. On to the midfielders, and in my tier 1 buy section is Matheus Cunha of Manchester United. I think he's looked exceptional for Man United over those first 2 games, has been Man United's key creative spark, had plenty of opportunities to score goals, unfortunately hasn't quite found the back of the net. In those first 15 minutes against Fulham, he had 3 chances and was really unlucky not to score. I do expect big things from him against Burnley and potentially in Brentford and Sunderland matches in 6 and 7. Matheus Cunha is definitely someone going under the radar that I would really like to have in my fantasy team for game week 3, and I most likely will. Second up on my tier 1 buy list is Anthony Gordon of Newcastle. Likely to again be playing up front for Newcastle in the absence of Alexander Isak and any other strikers for Newcastle, with 2 fantastic fixtures against Leeds and Wolves coming up. Expect Anthony Gordon to start up front and be on penalties over the next 2 game weeks. Even if Newcastle do sign a striker before the deadline, I'm expecting Anthony Gordon to continue to play for them, and I do still think he will be a nice pick in your team. Into the tier 2 buy section, and we do have Cody Gakpo of Liverpool. Although a tricky game against Arsenal, I do think it's still nice to have a little bit of that Liverpool attack. If you don't want to splash the cash on Mohamed Salah, Cody Gakpo could be a nice way into that Liverpool attack. With some fantastic fixtures coming up over 4, 5 and 6 with Burnley, Everton and Crystal Palace. Liverpool do have some nice fixtures coming up. Next up is Mohamed Kudus of Spurs at 6.6 million. Really good price, and Spurs with some just really brilliant fixtures over the next 5 game weeks. Bournemouth, West Ham, Brighton, Wolves and Leeds. All fixtures which could produce a lot of goals for Tottenham, and I think Kudus has looked really nice on that right wing for them. Looks to be a mainstay in the Frank team and could be a second striker if Frank adopts that 3-5-2 formation that he often showed at Brentford at times. Next up on this list is Enzo of Chelsea. I think a nice way into that Chelsea midfield, if you're not going for Cole Palmer, if he does have an injury and is out for this game week, is Enzo. He's also playing in that 10 role, and he tends to arrive in the box for Chelsea and really look like he could be a goal threat consistently throughout the season for them. It is something he looked good last season and has already got 1 goal and 1 assist for Chelsea. At 6.5 million, I really think he's a lovely price point to be going into over Chelsea's nice fixture run here. Next up on the list is Dango Atara, the new signing at Brentford at 6 million and likely to potentially be starting in a front 2 with Thiago or potentially just behind him. Could be a really nice pick for Brentford. With Sunderland in game week 3, he might be a really nice differential pick to have in your team. Also racked up over 12 defensive contribution points last week for Brentford and did get the additional 2 and the 3 bonus points in his performance. Next up is Anderson of Nottingham Forest. I still like him as a pick, despite the Douglas Luiz signing. I think Anderson may retain some set-piece duties. Great for DEFCON, although he has teased us with 11 defensive contributions in both of the last 2 game weeks. However, did manage 1 assist, has been good offensively. As you can see, his expected goals at 0.2 and expected assists at 0.16. Still very nice for a 5.5 million defender that can also get those additional 2 points for DEFCON. And finally, Pape Sarr of Tottenham. Now, maybe an outside pick here and a little bit of a differential, but I did notice the tactical setup for Thomas Frank against Man City. Pape Sarr was the one running on behind and in behind the defence of Manchester City and looking to get on the end of the second ball. And really could be a nice option at 5 million for Tottenham with 1 assist already so far this season. In the hold section, I do have Florian Wirtz of Liverpool. Just not enough info for me. There's only been 1 game week. I haven't seen the Newcastle game yet, as this has been recorded just before that. So he's still a hold for me for Liverpool. Next up is Matoma of Brighton. I think Matoma's been looking good despite not quite having been able to finish and score a chance for Brighton. I think Brighton offensively are a really nice side. And if you do have Matoma in your team, maybe just hold him a couple more game weeks to see how he goes against City and Bournemouth. Finally, Harry Wilson of Fulham. I thought Harry Wilson was an excellent pick at 5.5 million. Unfortunately, he did come off the bench for Fulham in game week 2 against Manchester United. I think it was tactically the setup that Silva chose due to Dorgu being pushed so high for Manchester United at so many options that Timothy Castagna actually played on the right wing for Fulham, who is obviously more of a fullback / wing back. However, Harry Wilson was brought on later on to give Fulham an attacking impetus. I do still expect him to start in game week 3, so maybe just hold fire on moving Harry Wilson out of your side for now. In the sell section, I've got Cole Palmer, potentially out for game week 3. I think he's someone that I think needs to move out of my side anyway. That value could be much better off spelt elsewhere. And at 10.5 million, I think I'd rather just downgrade to an Enzo and deal with him not being on the penalties. Saka in there, looked like he picked up a hamstring injury. I think it was the other leg to what he suffered previously, but if it is a hamstring injury with Saka, he might be out for a little bit of time, potentially for game week 3 and 4. And with Arsenal's tricky fixtures coming up over the next 4 game weeks, he is someone that I'd look to move out of anyway, before potentially game week 7 looking to jump back into those Arsenal assets. Finally, Jacob Murphy not being able to start so far for Newcastle in game week 1 is a sell from me. And Yuri Tielemans of Aston Villa. I don't believe the hype about Tielemans. He hasn't shown anything for me to think that he justifies that 6 million price. And I would much rather go up to perhaps a Morgan Rogers at 7 million if I was looking for an Aston Villa asset. On to the forwards. Quick shout out, please. Give this a like, subscribe down below to the channel if you have been enjoying this content so far. First up in tier 1 is João Pedro of Chelsea, a 15-pointer this week, and a great performance from him. With Palmer potentially being out, it does look like João Pedro might be on penalties for Chelsea, and perhaps playing in that attacking midfield role behind Delap could be a fantastic option for both goals and assists. And at 7.5 million might be a lovely price point with those Chelsea fixtures. Next up is Erling Haaland of Manchester City. Obviously the main man for City. Fantastic fixtures. Looks like he's in good form. And City, again, despite that loss to Spurs, I do expect them to bounce back next week against Brighton. In the tier 2 section, and we do have Gyökeres of Arsenal. Now, this is a bit of an outside pick. Arsenal do have some difficult fixtures coming up. But if somehow Gyökeres continues to rattle in those goals, having scored 2 last week and on penalties, especially if Saka is out, that will be confirmed. Gyökeres could be a nice differential, potentially someone to replace an Ollie Watkins with if you are looking to move out of him. Next up is Ekitike of Liverpool. Now, I think Ekitike looked absolutely fantastic for Liverpool in pre-season, in the Community Shield, and in the first game week against Bournemouth. Let's see how he goes against Arsenal. But for me, he's still a buy, regardless of the fixture against Arsenal. I think Ekitike could continue to go well. Chris Wood up there at 7.6 million. Some really nice fixtures for Nottingham Forest with West Ham, Burnley and Sunderland in the next 4 game weeks. Chris Wood looking dangerous again for Nottingham Forest, and someone that I definitely consider bringing into your team for game week 3 up against West Ham, who have been the worst defence in the league so far. Mateta next up on this list at 7.5 mil. Again, some nice fixtures for Crystal Palace over the next 5 game weeks. Sunderland, West Ham and Everton sandwiched in between Aston Villa and Liverpool. Richarlison up next at 6.6 million for Spurs here. And he has been the in-form man at the moment. Thomas Frank has noted that he expects him to be his starting number 9 for the moment. And if you are someone who likes to bring their transfers in based off form and the team and the nice fixtures, then Richarlison could be someone that you look for go for. Do bear in mind he could become a minutes risk in the future, but for the time being, I think he's a wonderful pick over the next few game weeks. Finally, I've got Jurgen Strand Larsen at 6.5 million for Wolves. Wolves' fixtures definitely start to turn a little bit nicer, especially from game week 5 where they have Leeds, and Jurgen Strand Larsen is definitely someone to look at. I would probably look potentially from game week 5. Let's see if he moves during that transfer window and see where he ends up. In the hold section, I do have Ollie Watkins. I think if you've got him, you had him for a reason. Potentially look to hold on to him unless you're looking to move up towards maybe a Haaland, take a risk on a Gyökeres or Ekitike. I think Ollie Watkins can easily be a hold unless you want to make an aggressive transfer as a manager. Sesko of Man United, if he is someone that you've brought in, I think I would probably hold him for this Burnley fixture. If he does start up front, definitely potential for some goals against Burnley. In the sell section, we do have Alexander Isak still not playing for Newcastle, Johan Wissa still not playing for Brentford, Dom Solanke, who looks like the number 2 behind Richarlison at the moment. Evan Nilsson, I just don't like the look of this Bournemouth team at the moment. A tricky fixture against Tottenham before playing Brighton, and then another tricky fixture against Newcastle in game week 5 as well. And finally, Rory Delap of Chelsea. He might get a few more minutes for Chelsea. However, I still think at the moment isn't somebody that I would be looking at with the potential for João Pedro to be taking his minutes up front. Finally, just a quick word on what your plans are going to be for game week 3, game week 4 and onwards. Do take a look at my free hit or wildcard video for game week 3. I think it's really interesting, and if you guys really aren't liking your team at the moment, I do suggest moving to a free hit rather than a wildcard. I drop a link down below in the channel, or check out that video on my channel. I think the free hit just gives you an extra week to think about before wildcarding, potentially over that international break where players can go away, pick up injuries, the transfer deadline finishes, so we know how the final teams are looking. Check out that video, a short 10-minute one, giving you some insights and some free hit and wildcard drafts that you can look at. Thank you guys so much for watching this video so far. If you have enjoyed it, please remember to give it a like and subscribe down below to the channel. It really does make a huge difference for small content creators like me, and I really appreciate it. This has been your English Aussie. Have a fantastic week, guys. Any questions, put them down below in the comments, and I will reply to everything.